In recent times, the world of franchise cricket has actually seen a number of new T20 leagues sprout up around the world. Not only are many of them, of course, taking inspiration from the IPL, but most of them are even taking investment from IPL teams. In fact, in the case of one league, the SA20, which is South Africa's new T20 league, the owners are all entirely made out of IPL team owners and basically bear the same name. So in essence, it's the IPL branching out all over the world of cricket. Now, whilst many cricket fans would see that as a good thing, that you have investors with a proven track record of, let's say, generating interest in a well-watched T20 league, invest in other T20 leagues all over the world, there has unfortunately been a few losers in this entire process, and one of them, inarguably so, has been the England and Wales Cricket Board when it comes to their domestic white ball offerings. Now, when it comes to England's, let's say, domestic T20 and even their white ball offerings, if you're going that route, there are two major leagues that are played. One is, of course, the T20 Plus, and the other was the recently launched 100. And the 100 was something that was actually controversial even before it was launched, because it once again took the, let's say, format or the rules of the game and twisted it in a way to try and make it even more different than already what T20 cricket was at a time when T20 cricket itself was selling the world over. However, now it does seem like the future of not just one but both of these leagues is in a little bit of danger. In this video, we're going to be looking at why that's the case, what it is that the ECB is planning to do in the future, and why are the main reasons that out of nowhere the ECB, despite pumping in so much money and as well as actually doing a major PR campaign to try and convince cricket fans the world over that the 100 was in fact the format for the future, are now deciding to do a U-turn barely a few years later. First up, it is worth noting that ECB's, all of these things are just very much in the plan phase. So the ECB are planning an overhaul as far as white ball cricket is concerned. Again, nothing is set in stone, and it will be a while before you can even think of potentially having these changes make any sort of an impact on the cricket, let's say, landscape. But it is very much in the plans, and one of the major things that will be done is to ensure that the T20 Blast and the 100, which are of course the two flagship tournaments for England's white ball cricket, will in fact be axed, they'll be done. And the main reason for this is there is a lot of pressure that is mounting on England to actually ensure that at a time when every single country is actually, let's say, having a successful T20 league of its own, their one isn't probably as successful as they would have liked, and a lot of it really has to do with themselves, because truth be told, the T20 Blast was not something that was catching on as much, but in the pressure to try and outdo themselves, they ended up creating the 100, and that in itself hasn't caught on as much as they would have liked. But what are the reasons why this has been the case? Well, the rise of other leagues, as I mentioned before earlier in the video, is one of the key reasons why England are suddenly feeling the pressure. So one of the things that is worth noting, that there have been a few new leagues that includes the ILT20, the International League T20, which is the T20 league based in UAE, as well as SA20, which is South Africa's domestic T20 league. They've started off and they've started really, really well. Now, by contrast, the 100 is not quite catching on the way that the ECB or even England cricket officials would have been hoping. And the T20 Blast, if you want to consider just how important the tournament is, it was being played very recently, but right in the middle of the Ashes, which meant that in truth, none of the major England players were playing it anyway. So that in itself was a major problem. And now you've had the introduction of the MLC, or Major League Cricket, and that in itself is ramping up the pressure even further, because not only is it yet another T20 league that's sprouting up, and again with the help of investment from IPL teams, but it's also taking place in more or less the same window, and that in itself is a major problem. You remember that now pretty much every T20 league the world over has its own windows in the new FTP, the ICC FTP, but the MLC is sprouted up and suddenly is actually garnering fan interest, and that in itself is a major problem because there is a scheduling conflict. In fact, this was something that was pointed out by none other than Australia cricketer Glenn Maxwell. What he said was that I think the Major League Cricket tournament is going to affect the Blast. You can go to America for 2 weeks compared to playing 14 games here with a stressful schedule. And he's got a valid point, because again, if you look at how it is that the MLC is scheduled right about now, you realize that it's mostly only played in 2 or 3 cities, and the schedule, because there's less number of teams as well, and of course the fact is that it's a new league, so money will not be a problem. In fact, the demand for top stars to play in America, which is a market that cricket would desperately want to crack, would be very, very high. And in fact, that is why you can see that, you know, there would be a lot of cricketers who would in fact choose to go to America rather than play in the T20 Blast. In fact, you're seeing that happen even now. You remember that Jason Roy, who's essentially contracted player with the ECB, but on an incremental deal, actually chose to forego that incremental deal so that he could go and play in the MLC for the Los Angeles Knight Riders. Again, the money on offer in franchise cricket was nothing in comparison to the was actually far more in comparison to the incremental essential deal that Roy had. And there's going to be many more players who actually end up feeling the same way. So not only is it about an existential crisis for, of course, you know, international cricket versus club cricket, there's also the fact that England at this point, despite being the white ball kings, remember, they're both the defending ODI and T20 World Cup champions, they don't really have let's say a franchise league that is really, you know, making waves the world over. In fact, the IPL is very much the gold standard, and now IPL teams themselves are investing in leagues around, which means not only, of course, guaranteed investment for quite some time, but also potentially Indian fan investment taking place in those leagues, because they would be curious to watch. For instance, say if you're a Mumbai Indian fan, you'd want to be watching, say, MI New York or MI Cape Town, and conversely, if you're a KKR fan, you'd be interested to know what say the Abu Dhabi Knight Riders or the Los Angeles Knight Riders are up to. Would you be interested in watching a match between Northamptonshire and Warwickshire? Probably not. And that is why the ECB is reaching a point where they too realize that the 100, the one thing which they had actually pumped so much money into, might just very well be better off left alone. In fact, it won't happen immediately, because again, there's broadcast deals for both the Blast as well as the 100, but it does seem like it is something that is seriously under consideration, and it's something that the ECB knows would be necessary for the future of their sport. You can let us know in the comments below how it is you feel about the 100 and the T20 Blast potentially going the way of the dodo, and don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, and also don't forget to download the SportsTak app and follow us across social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Plus, if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos that we've done. But for now, from my side, it's goodbye.